Robert, what's the latest coming out of Russia? I mean, I know what I'm seeing on the news. I know Jake Tapper, whatever he did, I think he interviewed he interviewed Zelensky, as a result of which he got 2,000 new followers on Twitter, and then posts a tweet in Russian to all my new Russian bot followers, something that's also funny. But what's the latest coming out of Ukraine, Russia?
Well, Jake Tapper's always been a CIA guy. That goes back to his Dartmouth days. On the legal front, a story came out of the Washington Post this past week, which said that American facial recognition big tech companies, in combination with social media mining companies, have been working with Ukrainian military elements and others in Ukraine to photograph dead Russian soldiers, run facial recognition software to identify them, then use their social media data mining to identify who their mothers are and the contact points for their mothers, and then they call them up and show them photos of their dead Russian sons. This should have been, and again, this isn't from Russia media. This isn't a Russian source. This is the Washington Post, which has been very overtly in favor of Ukraine in this war. And what was astounding is that, these folks are bragging about this. They think this is a good thing that they've done. To me, it is a war crime that they are committing. There's restrictions on identification of the dead, and in particular, and identification of prisoners of war. There are certain ways that's supposed to be handled under the Geneva Convention, in part to avoid things like this. And I found it morally atrocious behavior. The fact that a bunch of people were cheerleading it in the comment section of the Washington Post shows you the mindset of a lot of these folks. And there's the headline in the story.
I'm bringing it up because sometimes people say that Barnes is off base or exaggerating. This is the Washington Post. Ukraine is scanning faces of dead Russians, then contacting the mothers. Ukrainian officials say the use of facial recognition software that could help end the. I love the phrasing. The use of it, which could help end the brutal war. Yeah, if they're doing what they're doing to make it so demoralizing, setting aside international law. But some experts call it a, quote, classic psychological warfare that sets a gruesome precedent. And you can read it.
That's an understatement. It's horrific behavior. And there's two things that like the big tech companies should be aware of. One is that for various war crimes like this in general, all courts around the world, for the most part, recognize your legal right to bring such a claim. I'll be discussing that in a little bit more detail, as well as the sanctions and some other issues with the Duran on a live stream on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. But as to this aspect, there's a specific American tort that can be brought. Sometimes it's called outrageous conduct, extreme conduct.
Infliction of emotional distress?
Yes. So it's intentional infliction of emotional distress, which is predicated upon an older tort called extreme or outrageous conduct. In some states, you only have about 6 or 7 states, you also have something called a prima facie tort that acts as a substitute where the law doesn't already exist on it. This clearly is intentional infliction of emotional distress. The big tech companies are admitting overtly their complicity and culpability in it. And I think that those Russian mothers could file class action suit against these big tech companies for engaging in what is patently the definition of outrageous conduct. And it's horrific conduct, no matter who commits it, which side it's committed on. But it's bad. I mean, it's particularly bad that this is being bragged about in the American institutional press. This will only intensify Russian escalation in the war. It won't diminish it at all. And it makes the West look really bad. It makes American companies and America, frankly, look really bad. That we would celebrate something as morally atrocious as this kind of behavior.
And I love the way the Washington Post sort of, they what's the word? Not couch it. It's like, it might help end the war. In as much as committing war crimes might help end a war by, violating any international standard. As far as I'm concerned, all war is crime. So the idea of war crimes is somewhat redundant, but it might help end the war. If you drop a nuclear bomb on a city, it might help end the war as well. That's actually it reminds me of something that happened once upon a time during one of the intifadas where the Palestinian Authority had captured Israeli soldiers, and a mob developed outside the police precinct. Robert, if you remember this, and I'm remembering it wrong, correct me, but I do remember they broke in. They ended up murdering the soldiers in the worst way possible, but called their spouses or called a wife of one of them while it was happening because they had their cell phone. I mean, it's like, I don't know how you can have standards even in war, but surely there have to be.
Well, yeah, we have the Geneva Convention for a reason, and we have this tort in American law for this reason, to deal with this kind of conduct. If you engage in outrageous conduct that hurts another intentionally, you are liable in the law. And these corporations that are being complicit and culpable and conspiring in this manner are very much can be held accountable. And clearly, they haven't even thought that through. I mean, it's disturbing the degree that what we're witnessing in live time. But that's the main legal update on the Ukrainian front. The big news of the week, of course, involved the effort of a person some people think might be an alien, Elon Musk, trying to buy Twitter.
Well, we're going to get there in 1 second. I'm going to bring up one chat. Light Giver says, I've been following Patrick Lancaster. Robert, I believe you've mentioned him a number of times. U.S. Navy vet who has been covering this war. You anti-Russian people should go watch all of his videos on YouTube and listen to the Ukrainian people. He is in Mariupol. There was another comment about Lancaster as well. Let me just see where it is.
He's been covering it. People can find him on YouTube, maybe on Rumble as well. But he's a he's the guy referenced as the artistic photographer who ultimately went over to cover Donbass for after covering Crimea and just stayed there and has been covering it for 8 years. So you can see his videos going all the way back. If you watch him, obviously he's on the Donbass pro-Russian side is where he's located physically, but you don't get a strong bias from him. Other networks, the Military and Foreign Affairs Network, people can follow for daily updates. Also, I think it's called Defense something Asia is another one that's really good that does detailed daily updates. And then obviously the Duran has been doing daily updates, both Alexander Mercouris and Alex. And then there's a blog from an independent perspective. The guy's been around for a while, really good analysis, which is Jacob Dreisen. You can look up the Jacob Dreisen report. I think it's jacobdreisenreport.com. And those are all good independent sources separate from the institutional media for coverage, because unfortunately the media coverage in America has been bad, and the West has been bad. In Britain, it's been atrocious. The number of fake news stories they've run that have been debunked as fake within 24 hours in many cases has been extraordinary with no sense of it. But there'll be an accounting for this down the road. But in the interim, we live in the fog of war, unfortunately. But to see some of these moral atrocities being celebrated by Western media and Western companies, I mean, this is just a new level of depth to a certain extent. This is the kind of things that like the Japanese fascists did during their war, and it's not to that level, but it's that mindset of dehumanizing the other side, and I mean, some of these mothers, are crying, and they're, why are you doing this to me? What this is not that this. Well, it's bad if you support Ukraine. Bad strategy, just pure and simple. You want to, poking a Russian bear doesn't lead the Russian bear to go into hibernation. But this is morally horrific conduct that no matter which side you are on the conflict, or whether you care at all about the conflict, you should condemn, and should be condemned by everybody.
Someone asked, what about Bucha? And I don't know which way they're asking the question, but what is the latest on Bucha, about any investigations from the UN or other entities?
So the UN, the West, the British in particular, blocked any independent UN-based investigative inquiry. Instead, Ukraine is in control of it, and the EU and the International Criminal Court is involved. The International Criminal Court is not recognized by the United States or Russia as having any authority or jurisdiction. So, and if anybody that's followed them, for good cause. Same with Israel. It's because they're so heavily political. They're a useless body. They're well, maybe this would be a good transition. They're almost as political as our January 6th judges are.